Good day, everybody. This is Mr. Murdoch, and let's learn about the urinary system today. The urinary system's primary job is to clean the body, to rid the body of toxins, and generally speaking, that means cleaning the blood, because the blood picks up all the toxins from the various cells throughout the body, and then as the blood passes through the kidneys, passes into the kidney through the renal artery, the kidney cleans the blood, detoxifies the blood, and then returns the cleansed blood through the renal vein and then into this inferior vena cava and so on. But through its time in the kidney, the blood has been cleaned. The toxins and the components of the blood that the kidney has filtered out are then transported out of the kidney through the rest of the urinary system, which includes the ureters here, these whitish gray tubules that carry the urine all the way down to the bladder, where it's stored deep in the pelvic cavity. And then the urine can be stored there for a while, and then it is released out the body through the urethra. So once again, the body concentrates the toxins, takes the toxins out of the blood, concentrates them in a fluid called urine. So it's a water-based fluid, so these toxins, for example, urea, ammonia, various ions and metabolic byproducts and drugs and toxins from the environment and this sort of thing are filtered out of the blood and dissolved in water. And that solution is called urine. And as it leaves the kidney, the rest of the urinary system is just a bit of plumbing, some pipes here, and then a tank, and then another pipe, and it gets rid of the urine, gets the urine out of the body. So the kidneys do a wonderful job. It's absolutely mandatory. Your blood needs to be cleaned. There's no option. You can probably a person can get by maybe with one kidney. Don't necessarily need two to survive, but just in case, we have most humans, normal humans, have two kidneys. This is a sample of the urine, the mix, the solution of water and a bunch of metabolic toxins. So the urinary system's not that complex regarding anatomy. It has two kidneys, of course, two ureters, a bladder, and a urethra. So those are the various organs and structures involved in the urinary system. The kidney makes up most of the urinary system, so most of our lecture time here will be spent talking about the kidney. Once again, once it leaves the kidney, it's just a bit of plumbing, and we have some layers to the tube and layers to the tank, and some muscle involved, but it's not very complicated. What goes on in the kidney is fairly complicated. One of the most challenging parts of the urinary system is the chemistry involved, because blood is a chemical and urine is a chemical, and a lot of these toxins are chemicals, and how the body deals with this chemistry is kind of challenging for many students, so please be aware of the chemistry of urine. And a lot of that will be in our second video lecture for this particular topic. Today we're just going to cover, or this particular lecture will cover, the basic anatomy of the urinary system, which in large part is the kidney. So here we see for our first time divergence of the genders. So male and female urinary systems are a little bit different, mainly in the urethra. So the female urethra is quite short versus the male urethra, which is quite long, relatively speaking. The male urethra also serves reproductive function, in that semen and sperm exit the man's body through the urethra. In the female, the urethra does not serve any reproductive function. It is merely urinary function. Of course, the female has a vagina for reproductive function. Separate openings and tubules in the human female. In many other vertebrates, the vagina and the urethra merge, and they come together, and only one tube actually exits the body, minimizing bodily openings. But with humans, of course, there's a separate urethral opening and a vaginal opening. So here's the female urethra versus the male. So everything else in the urinary system is fairly consistent between males and females. Okay, so the organs are the kidneys, the ureters, the bladder, single bladder, and a single urethra. Functions, by and large, there's a big note for you. filtering the blood and producing urine. What does that actually mean, though? Taking the toxins out of the blood, removing the undesirable components of the blood, and putting in this other chemical, generating this other chemical, which is basically all of those products and those wastes and those toxins that the body deems unnecessary, puts them in a bunch of water or puts them in some water, and that's called urine. So it has all these cell waste products dissolved in water, and then they're eliminated from the body. So roughly speaking, 95% of the urine is water. It varies considerably, depends on a person's hydration level, etc., environment, and salt content. Some other things, the main solutes of the urine are urea, uric acid, creatinine, ketone bodies, and a variety of toxins. Too numerous to name. Any toxin from the environment, food, fertilizers, pesticides, insecticides on the farm products, bus exhaust, all sorts of toxins get into our bodies from the air, the water, the food. So we have to go about eliminating them. Also some ions. Some of them we need to get rid of anyway. Others we just soon hang on to, but they need to be replenished because some of this stuff does just kind of leak out in the urine. Sodium, for example, does come out in the urine, even though we kind of need it. It's unavoidable. Hydrogen ions, on the other hand, we definitely would like to get rid of. You'll see shortly, but cells generate hydrogen ions as a metabolic byproduct, and so makes it acidic, makes the environment acidic, so these constantly have to be removed from the body. So we see down here that the pH of urine is about 6, so it's considerably acidic. It's definitely to the acidic side, and that's due to all these hydrogen ions in the urine. So that's it. Make urine. Basically get rid of the nasties, the ickies, the toxins, get them out of the body. If a person's kidneys don't function properly, the blood still has to be cleaned, and that can be done by the process known as dialysis. And 3 or 4 times a week, the patient would go into a dialysis clinic or a hospital and basically have their blood cleaned by a machine. After a day or 2 days, the blood just starts to accumulate too many toxins for proper health. So the kidneys, of course, cleaning the blood on a very regular moment-by-moment basis. But again, in the case of kidney failure, the blood has to be cleaned at least once, again, roughly every other day. There's a couple of variables. Anyway, assuming a person's kidneys do work properly, they would produce about 1 to 2 liters of urine per day, so maybe 1.5 on the average. The pH can vary, but it's usually to the acidic side, again, kind of getting rid of this ever consistent flow of protons, of hydrogen ions from the body cells. Specific gravity of urine is from 1.003 to 1.03, and this number describes how much solutes are in the solution, how much of all of this is dissolved in the solution. Pure water is 1.000. So as you get closer to the number 1, it gets more like pure water. So that would be very dilute urine. As you get away from 1.000, here's a magnitude of 10 increase to 1.03, that the urine is becoming more concentrated now. You might say yellower, thicker, richer, darker, more toxins, more concentrated urine. So it varies from in spectrum. A well-hydrated person has a dilute urine. A less than hydrated person needs to drink some water, has concentrated urine. You can tell the body's hydration level in general by the color of the urine. It should generally be clear. It denotes proper hydration. So in regulating, in filtering the blood, the kidneys regulate blood's volume and pressure, and subsequently blood pressure. You can regulate the pressure of the blood by regulating its volume. The more volume the blood has, the more water in the blood, the more volume the blood has, then there'll be more volume, and that will put more pressure on the system. You're increasing the volume of the fluid, puts more pressures on the walls of the vessels and on the heart, etc. This is blood pressure. So if the kidneys release a lot of water, that would reduce the blood volume because all that water is leaving the body, and subsequently decreasing blood pressure. So On the other hand, if the kidneys did not release a lot of urine, and this can be regulated to a certain degree, urine water was held back out of the urine, then that would tend to increase blood pressure. So the kidneys can manipulate blood volume and pressure. So many blood pressure medications actually target the kidneys of all organs. So the kidneys can regulate the blood pressure. You'll see. Also regulating ions and subsequently pH regarding the hydrogen ions. So you see all these ions can be regulated, and even more than these ions are regulated through the urinary system. If you have too much, your kidneys can get rid of those excess ions. If you don't have enough, well, then your kidneys can save and conserve those excess ions. Not excess, those ions that you need to save, those ions in short supply. So the kidneys and the urinary system. And here's a urinalysis, typical urinalysis, showing some of the chemicals in urine. Most of them are toxic, or at least you need to be getting rid of sooner or later. But a few of them, like example, calcium and magnesium, are valuable ions, but they inevitably leak out, so to speak, in the urine. Again, mainly water. Okay, this is an early pregnancy test kit. Urine is used, of course, to detect the hormone level of human chorionic gonadotropin, which is typically produced by a fetus or an embryo. So it's a good way to detect the presence of an embryo, and it would show up in the mother's urine. Urine also used for drug screening these days for various drugs, such as here cocaine and amphetamines. THC is the active ingredient in marijuana, opiates, including heroin, also PCP from the 70s. Pretty common to be drug tested these days for new jobs, so the urine's very revealing about many components of the body. So urinalysis is very useful in detecting general health and beyond. So here's our picture from our book showing the urinary system, or at least part of it. The kidneys, the ureters, and the bladder. No urethra here. I think we're moving our way to the kidney now. So here's a sheep kidney, dissected sheep kidney. And maybe we'll return to this. Let's look at the artist picture first. And I think we even have a better one. Let's go with this image here showing the kidney and its major parts. So the outside of the kidney is called the cortex, shown here in light pink. The middle part of the kidney, which varies between these seashell-looking structures called pyramids, and the spaces between them called columns. So pyramid, column, pyramid, column, pyramid, column. This middle region with the pyramids and the columns is the medulla. So outer cortex. Moving inward, we get to the medulla, and then the innermost region, which is considerably different. It's more just the beginning of the ureter, kind of. The ureter's down here. It just kind of branches out into what's known as the pelvis. So this is the renal pelvis, and then these extensions of the pelvis that kind of meet up with the pyramids of the medulla. These extensions are called calyces. Smaller ones called minor calyx. Larger ones, several smaller calyces, minor calyces merge to form major calyces, the bigger ones, and then the major calyces merge to form the renal pelvis, the pelvis proper. And by this point, the fluid that's draining and moving through here is called urine, and as you know, it moves out of the kidney, out of the pelvis here, and into the ureter. But you'll notice that the pelvis is continuous with the ureter. It's similar, very similar material that the structures are made out of. This area of the kidney here, this little concave area where the ureter is coming out or going in, also the renal artery and the renal vein would be in this area. This is called the hilum. This is the hilum, this area where the blood vessels are and the ureter. So it's not here, not here, not here, not here, not here. This is the hilum on this side of the kidney. Okay, so in review, this is the cortex, this is the medulla with the pyramids and the columns, and the columns, and these are minor calyces, and this is a major calyx, that's a major calyx, and then they come into the pelvis, and then the pelvis drains into the ureter. And here's a photomicrograph. Maybe we'll come back to that, or we'll see it again when we are a little more seasoned with these various parts of the kidney. The one main thing you might be able to see here is that the cortex is to the outside. Then as you get toward the bottom of the image here, this medulla that's deeper into the kidney, and you notice that they do look a little different on the photomicrograph. So keep that in mind, at least for now, and the details you'll learn about shortly. All right, so the main function of the kidney is to clean blood and produce urine. Enough said. The right kidney is typically a little lower than the left. The liver is over on the right side, takes up a lot of space, and it pushes that right kidney down just a little bit. So a little asymmetry presenting itself here in the human body. Wrapping around the kidney is the renal capsule. So it's a supportive collagen membrane, as many organs have some sort of an outer wrap. This is the outer wrap of the kidney, the renal capsule. The hilum is the concave area, the typical kidney shape, that the part that kind of bulges in. Then the three regions of the kidney, the outer cortex. It's really a big business end of the kidney. That outer region, it contains what are known as the nephrons, and that's what the next video lecture is all about. The nephrons are the little structures that make urine. You got about 1 million or 2, and each little nephron makes a little bit of urine, actually filtering the blood, actually producing the urine. And most of those nephrons are in the cortex, and we'll get down to that small level shortly, but that's the main action of the cortex, is the nephrons. Then you get the medulla. Now the medulla has these things called the loops and collecting ducts. Again, you'll learn more about it later, but the loops and collecting ducts, and that's what gives the medulla this kind of straight appearance, these long, not straight, but kind of linear white lines. Notice that's lacking up here in the cortex. So these are collecting ducts and loops of Henle, as you see labeled here. So that's what you're looking at in that medullary region. Now what the medulla does primarily is it concentrates the urine. So it makes it very concentrated. It takes it drains a lot of the water out of the urine to conserve it. Water is a commodity in nature, and you don't want to be urinating out all of your body water, so you want to save as much as possible. You're going to have to get rid of a little in the urine. The material, the toxins have to stay dissolved, like sewage. It has to stay flowing. So there has to be some water involved, and that water will be lost ultimately, but we want to conserve as much as possible. Generally speaking, if a person's very well hydrated, lots of water going down, then maybe we can afford to lose some water, and we don't need to concentrate the urine so much in a very well hydrated individual. But day in and day out, we're trying to save water. So as we lose it to the environment, we need to try and conserve it. So that's what the medulla really does. Holds back water, reabsorbs water. The urine becomes more concentrated then. Reabsorbs it back into the blood, basically. We're pulling it back into the blood. Nope, you're not going to the urine. You're staying in the body. You're staying in the blood. That's what we're doing to the water. Then, as I chanted previously, the medulla is made up of pyramids, columns, kind of alternating. Deepest region is the pelvis, and again, more of a tubule system composed of these minor and major calyces, and then the calyces funnel into each other, and then they funnel into the pelvis as the urine is kind of produced by this point. The pelvis doesn't do much as far as producing the urine. The pelvis kind of collects it and then funnels it, so to speak, into the ureters. And after that, not much happens to it besides moving along and getting out of the body. All right, so the right kidney is a little lower than the left, and you can kind of see their images. They're close to the big blood vessels. So they're the filters of the blood. So not only do they get their own blood, like every organ gets blood, they get excess blood, they get a ton of blood, they get a whole bunch of blood to clean and work on. That's their job, is to work on blood and clean it. So that's why the renal arteries and the renal veins are rather sizable, especially for the size of a kidney. The kidney's not all that big. They have these big old vessels coming to and fro to it. So again, the vessels are fairly prominent because a lot of blood's going to the kidney. As you'll see shortly, about 25% of the blood at any given time is in the kidney. The kidney is really saturated and full of blood. Well, it's cleaning it. Here's how the blood gets there. Now, we kind of saw the big picture here from it begins in the aorta, its journeys in the aorta, and then it goes into the renal artery, and then the renal arteries go into the kidney. As we see in this image, then, here is the remainder of the journey, and it's quite lengthy, so hang in there. From the renal artery branches into segmental arteries, and yes, you do have to know the entire sequence. The segmental arteries then branch into interlobar arteries. They go up into the medullary columns in between the pyramids, as you see here, interlobar arteries. Then the cross ones, the vessels that go across are called arcuate arteries, and they carry the blood up into the from the medulla to the cortex. Now we're going to get real small here. And from the arcuate arteries, you see these branches here, I'm going to change the name from the book. These are called interlobular artery. The book over here calling them cortical radiate arteries and veins. That name I'm not sure about. So let's go interlobular. So these bigger ones here are interlobar, then the arcuate, and then this is interlobular. Now we're getting very small here, getting microscopic, because what we're trying to do is we're going to bring this blood, at least a little bit of the blood, to each nephron. And the nephrons are microscopic and minuscule. Each kidney has about 1 million of them, so you can see how small they are. You can imagine how small they are. And so we are getting this blood to a smaller and smaller vessel to feed, ultimately to feed the nephron, to give it some of the blood so it can be cleaned. Now we're going to have to increase the magnification, and we'll go ahead a slide or two to look what happens from here. So orient yourself, gather your marbles, because we're going to get smaller, and we're going to pick up kind of at this level where the cursor is hovering and circling. So here we are. This was the interlobar artery. Here was the arcuate artery. Here's the interlobular artery, or as our book is calling it, they're not labeled here, so let's not worry about it. It's the cortical radiate artery, but I like interlobular. Then you see it's feeding the nephron. The nephron is this purple little twisted tubule, and you see the blood is coming in. It looks like the nephron, that little mouth, that little purple mouth, looks like you're feeding an animal at the petting zoo or something. This little red piece of blood, little red vessel giving the blood to the purple nephron, and then the nephron cleans that little blood once it gets it. We're going to have to get small again, and let's pick up here at the interlobular artery feeding the nephron. All right, here we are. Here's the interlobular artery feeding the nephron. There we see it here. Here's one nephron, and here's a different nephron. This one's better for our purposes now. So this vessel here that comes off of the interlobular artery and feeds the nephron is called the afferent arteriole. The afferent arteriole goes to the nephron. You see, here's a different one that's labeled afferent arteriole going to the nephron. Then the afferent arteriole goes to this ball of capillaries. See that ball of capillaries in there? Let's jump over to this one. See the ball of capillaries in there? Yes, indeedy. So here's a big blow up of that area. Here is the afferent arteriole bringing the unfiltered or uncleaned blood to this ball of capillaries. That's what we see here. That's what we see here. That's called the glomerulus. That's where filtration occurs. Big deal, filtration. Hold on. From the glomerulus, here's where it gets a little tricky. Some blood leaves. Some blood leaves the glomerulus and enters the nephron. So this purple part and this blue part, the purple part and the blue part, the purple part and the blue part, those are part of the nephron. And I'm going to say about 10% of the blood leaves. 90% stays in the glomerulus, doesn't leave into the nephron, stays in the glomerulus, and then continues on through the blood vessels into what's known as the efferent arteriole, which exits the glomerulus. The glomerulus is this ball of capillaries. The big purple thing over the ball of capillaries is Bowman's capsule, and that's part of the nephron. So here's where we see the blood is leaving the cardiovascular system and entering the urinary system to be cleaned, right at this point here. So let's start getting big. Let's expand out. So we're leaving the glomerulus. This is about as small as we get. And we leave the glomerulus through the efferent arteriole, the exit door. Let's jump over to this picture here. Here's where we're leaving the glomerulus. Leaving the glomerulus. This is the efferent arteriole. Then it branches into all these capillaries. See all these capillaries surrounding the nephron. Now the nephron's the colorful tubule, starting purple, then going to blue, and then to green, then to brown. That's the nephron. These blood vessels all around the nephron are called the peritubular capillaries. This encyclopedia is calling them intertubular, but we're going to call them peritubular. So from the interlobular artery to the afferent arteriole into that ball of the glomerular capillaries, out of the glomerular capillaries into the efferent arteriole, from the efferent arteriole to these peritubular capillaries, which wind very tightly, very intimately, touching a lot of surface contact with the nephron. So the blood vessels in the nephron, mark my words, are in very close connection with each other. And then it gets a little easier, folks. From the peritubular capillaries, the blood enters the interlobular vein. And so we just work our way out now. Whew. From the interlobular vein, you go to the arcuate vein, getting bigger. From the arcuate vein to the interlobar vein. And then from the interlobar veins, so here is the interlobular vein, the arcuate vein going across, the interlobar vein coming in between the pyramids, ultimately leading to the renal vein. Quick note, you notice there's these things called segmental arteries. There is not, and I'm not sure why, any segmental veins to kind of mirror the segmental arteries. It looks like there should be. It looks like, what's this called? If not a segmental vein, but nonetheless, it's really not called that. So, but otherwise, everything's pretty symmetrical on the way in and then on the way out. Let's chant it together. The renal artery, the segmental artery, the interlobar artery, the arcuate artery, the interlobular artery. Oops, hold on there. The interlobular artery to the afferent arteriole, to the glomerulus, to the efferent arteriole, to the peritubular capillaries, to the interlobular vein, to the arcuate vein, from the arcuate vein to the interlobar vein. There is no segmental vein, I don't know why, to the renal vein, and then to the inferior vena cava. Those are the blood vessels you need to know. Here's your book's view of it. The yellow doesn't come out so good, but it kind of shows the in and the out of the blood vessels. Now you can look in the book for that. And here is the chant, the words to the chant, the blood supply to the kidney. And we just went through all that. Amazingly, the kidneys contain about 25% of the blood at any given time. So if you ask me, that's a lot. In review. And the nephron is where we will pick up this topic when that will be in the urinary system video lecture number 2.